So here's our first Dvadasamsa example. To start with, we're just going to look at the effects of the Dvadasamsa Rashis and how that's modifying the effects of the Rashi chart Rashis. Okay, because the Dvadasamsa is the really important modification of the Rashi. Starting with the Sun, this person has Sun in Pisces in the Rashi, Sun in Scorpio in the Dvadasamsa. So this person, when we see them and look at their Sun, we don't just want to think Pisces, we also want to think Scorpio. Okay? Now, of course, Pisces in general can be soft but focused. And in Western astrology, they actually don't give a lot of good results to Sun in Pisces. They kind of make it a little more wavering than it actually is. But let's look at that a little more carefully. As I talk about in my character effects of the Grahas course, I give a way that you can interpret the effects of planets in different houses, okay, or in different Rashis. So, from the planet's Mula Trikona house, you see what Rashi it's in. Sun's Mula Trikona is Leo. From Leo, the Sun's in the 8th house. And we know the 8th house is a secret house and a house of change. So the Sun in Pisces does have an element of changeability to it and an element of secretiveness to it, which are like the common sort of qualities that Western astrologers like to give the Sun in Pisces sign. But then we also have to look at the house the planet rules from that sign. So from Pisces, the Sun rules the 6th house. And we know that's a house of work and effort. And then we also have to consider that the Sun in Pisces is in a natural friend sign. So it being in a natural friend sign, Jupiter is going to help Sun in Pisces have a good Sun quality all in all. So it generally would be considered a favorable position in Vedic astrology due to being in a friend sign. And Jupiter as a friend to the Sun gives the Sun a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, which helps the Sun be consistent, have follow through, and be steadfast, and use its intelligence to fulfill things that it feels a need or a purpose towards. And so it brings out some good Sun qualities. But because from Leo, the Sun's Mula Trikona, the Sun's in the 8th, there'll be an element of changeability and unexpectedness that can reshift the focus. So it's not that Sun in Pisces is flaky, it's just that things can come along unexpectedly that reshift their focus to a greater sense of purpose and meaning. And that we can look at as a healthy sense of surrender, the ability to go with the flows and shifts of life. And then from Pisces, the Sun rules the 6th house, the house of effort and hard work, and gradually improving over time due to that effort and hard work. So when Sun in Pisces has that focus, it is hard-working and persevering and puts the time in to improve and reach its goals. But eventually, things will shift because of that 8th house position. So that's very much a quality of this person. They're hardworking. They believe in what they do. It's important, they focus on what they believe is worth doing. They're idealistic, like we'd expect the Sun and Jupiter sign to be. They're hardworking, but their life throws unexpected twists their way. Like they had to drop out of college, for instance, due to unforeseen circumstances. So they shifted into those new circumstances and worked hard and mastered them. So whenever unexpected things came, they just went with the flow and worked it. Now, in the Dvadasamsa, the Sun falls over here in Scorpio. So we got a Pisces Scorpio. And Scorpio, we know, is a much more fixed and focused sign that's very tenacious, that really holds on to things due to its emotional needs. So this person would be a little more fixated than your average Sun in Pisces. Now from Leo, the Sun's Mula Trikona, the Sun is in the 4th house. So Sun in Scorpio is very emotionally centered and very emotionally anchored. Sun in Scorpio is in a natural friend sign once again. So that brings out the good qualities. The discipline of Mars helps to anchor the Sun and make it more focused and steadfast, which is a good quality of the Sun, one of the main qualities of the Sun. And then, of course, from Scorpio, the Sun rules the 10th house. So the Sun in Scorpio likes to achieve and be in command, which makes sense because Mars, which rules Scorpio, is the general of the army and likes to be in command too. So Sun in Scorpio is, considered to be a good placement for being in command of situations. And this person has that ability. They've always fallen into positions of command, even from a young age when they were quickly in both high schools they went to. They were, one junior high and then one high school in different cities, in different states actually. They were president of both those things. So they, in one school they instantly rose to power, and in another school in another state with a whole new body of students, they also rose to power, like we'd expect to see a nice, strong Sun do. Now, but Sun in Pisces is a female sign, and Sun in Scorpio is a female sign. So when these positions get their power, when the Sun gets its rulership in those signs, it gets them because the environment provides them to them. Okay, it's not because they actively seek and seize them and take them. It's just they most naturally fit the role in the environment, or people give it to them. And so this person, never had this ambition to do, become the leader. It just kind of everything fell in place, and it, the environment just kind of gave it to her. Everyone liked her. Everyone thought she was capable, and people just she was, had good school spirit, and everyone just wanted her to do these things, and she just kind of fell into those roles. So here we've got a quite complementary position. The Sun's in an even sign in both. It's in a natural friend sign in both. And it's, from the Sun's position in the Rashi, the Sun is in the 9th house in the Dvadasamsa, a nice placement. If a planet's in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house in the Dvadasamsa from where it's at in the Rashi, there'll usually be a little more friction or tension around that planet, or things will take a little more work, or some difficulty has to be overcome in order to make things happen. So this is a very complementary Sun position when we look at both Vargas. We're very focused and determined and receptive Sun. Okay? Alright, let's look at another planet. Let's look at Venus. Venus in this person's Rashi chart's in Taurus, in its own sign, ruling the 1st house. And of course, Venus in Taurus is a great place for Venus. And Venus, of course, we know is a planet of relating and relationships. And in its own sign, it's going to be more attuned and able to do that. Let's look how Venus in Taurus actually does that. From Venus, from Libra, which is Venus's Mula Trikona position, Venus is in the 8th house, in a fixed sign. So a stable sign, but in the 8th house. 8th house is other people's money. We know that, and the conjugal bond. We know that Venus is a relationship-centered planet. And ultimately, the 8th house is other people's money because it's the value we get from our partnership or relationship. And there's all kinds of values. It's not just financial. So Venus in Taurus is very keen about what it's getting from the other person and also what it's giving to the other person. So Venus in the Taurus is very much win-win centered to really have each other's needs, both material and emotional needs, met in a relationship. So it gives a really nice, strong relationship capacity. And then from Venus, his position in Taurus, it rules the 1st and 6th house. So that's the ability to suffer when necessary. 1st and 6th house combined makes you be able to put your time in, basically, and realize that not everything's perfect and you have to work towards things becoming better, which is always a good relationship attitude. So this person's going to have all that. Now, within that paradigm, though, Venus in the Dvadasamsa is sitting over here in Cancer. And Cancer is not a great place for Venus in general because Venus falls asleep then. So Venus's desire to have win-win relationships fades away. And like I said, Venus and Mercury are both really relationship planets that make the relationship more important than the individual. But when we drop Venus in Cancer, that quality kind of falls asleep and gets overcome by the individuality ruled by Venus's enemy, the moon. Okay? And so now relationships when Venus in Cancer become a little more personal, where the relationship becomes more about the person than it does about the relationship. Now, Venus in Cancer is not starved. It's in a natural enemy sign, but it's a watery sign. But it's thirsty. And so since the relationship becomes more about oneself rather than the relationship, the Venus in Cancer feels a little thirsty all the time. They never feel like their needs are completely met. And this has been true in this person's life. They are very relationship-centered. They strive for win-win with the Venus and Taurus. They work towards that. And then Venus is in Cancer in the Dvadasamsa. There's that Cancer quality where some things, not all things, but some things are more about them than about the relationship. And so they don't feel the fulfillment they are hoping to have completely. So relationship is somewhat unfulfilled. Okay? So it's not as great as a Venus as we look at it first. And obviously Venus is starred by Saturn, which makes things worse. And that's caused some other more serious problems. But I'm just talking about the thirst of Venus. Now, Venus in Cancer, we know is not a great position because it's sleeping. And it's in a natural enemy sign, right? Now, from Venus's Mula Trikona, from Venus's Mula Trikona, which is Libra, Venus is in the 10th house, the house of karma or action. So Venus in Cancer very much takes action to fulfill its needs. Okay, it's very need motivated and it acts upon those needs. And those needs are more for what it needs rather than what the relationship necessarily needs. So it's not a great relationship position. From Venus's position in Cancer, it rules the 4th and 11th bhavas. 11th house is the house of gains, hopes, and desires. And the 4th house is, again, the house of one's emotional happiness and needs. So Venus in Cancer very much hopes to gain what it hopes to get. It has its hopes and ambitions that it hopes to achieve. And those things are not completely fulfilled in a relationship, which is where Venus is meant to work. And so Venus is in Cancer where he is thirsty. So there's not a total fulfillment there. But there's a strong need for that due to this Venus. So here we see a Venus that actually takes a step down when we really look at it in both charts. It's looking good in the Rashi, but then in the Dvadasamsa we see there's a tendency to make relationships less personal, more personal rather than making it more about oneself than the relationship. Right? And the biggest thing is not making it win-win as Taurus wants to do, and making sure everyone's needs are and financially or materially and emotionally are met, but a little more agenda on the person's needs getting met and their hopes being fulfilled in the relationship, and thirst as a result of those things not happening. Okay? Now, Jupiter is a good planet to look at. Jupiter's in Scorpio in the Rashi chart. Great place for Scorpio. It's in a natural friend sign, so it's a good position. From Jupiter's Mula Trikona sign Sagittarius, Jupiter's in the 12th house. But it's still a good position. We know that the 12th house has difficult connotations, but Jupiter's good in Scorpio because it's in a natural friend sign. Okay? So Jupiter in the 12th house Jupiter in Scorpio, the 12th house influence, it has to do with charity and surrender, good qualities of the 12th house, and basically the discipline to do that. And where does it get that discipline? From that internal strength that Scorpio gives. So Jupiter in Scorpio basically indicates a internal strength that is based on a person's belief or philosophy, which is Jupiter, allows them to make the hard surrenders in life and to let go of the things that aren't working in life. Okay? And that person has these qualities to a decent degree. Okay? Now in the Dvadasamsa, however, we see that Jupiter falls into... Actually, I want to say a little bit more about Jupiter here and use that method again, which is a great method for just seeing the effects of a planet in a Rashi, better than all the cookbook stuff you're going to find in the old books. Alright, so from his Mula Trikona, Jupiter's in the 12th. From Jupiter's in Scorpio, Jupiter rules the 2nd house and the 5th house. So Second house is the house of responsibilities, and therefore Jupiter in Scorpio is responsible. Okay, it's this responsible position. And there's always a commitment. Scorpio can be very committed. It is a fixed and disciplined sign. So commitment to responsibilities, commitment to fifth house things, children, whatever the case may be. And you'll really find Jupiter in Scorpio is the type of people that really do fight for their children and their children's well-being. Okay? And so this person has all those nice Jupiter and Scorpio qualities. Now in the Dvadasamsa, Jupiter falls into Capricorn, which means as far as a Scorpio Jupiter is concerned, this one's really not, as good as we think. Jupiter in Capricorn is Jupiter's first. It's sleeping, so Jupiter can't do any good there. Now, fortunately, Jupiter in Capricorn isn't a natural neutral sign, so he's not getting starved and automatically destroyed. He just can't do anything by himself. He's just a little vacant. Jupiter, from Jupiter's Mula Trikona, he's in the second house. So Jupiter in Capricorn is a resource-centered and, what's the word I'm looking for? A responsible position, or has responsible focus, but it always gets tagged with responsibilities that it just can't fulfill. Okay, that circumstances don't allow it to fulfill it. And so that will create some big disappointments in life. From Capricorn, Jupiter rules the 3rd and 12th houses. The 3rd house is the house of one's personal will, the things that we personally want to do. And the 12th house is expense and waste. So Jupiter in Capricorn can end up wasting a lot of time in what it personally wants to do and trying to see what it personally wants to do as a responsibility, because we got that second house thing. So Jupiter in Capricorn is seeking a responsibility, and it seeks those things in things that it wants to do. And it does those things because Jupiter sleeping is starved, in a sense, for finding some meaning in life. Jupiter in Capricorn feels a lack of meaning and purpose because that's what Jupiter gives us. And when he's sleeping, we just don't have that completely. Okay? So, but he tries to find that in things that he wants to do. And then he can end up wasting a lot of time and energy in things that aren't really going to fulfill its greater purpose and give it the meaning it wants. So this person's Jupiter is just not as good as it looks at first glance. Okay? And of course, that Jupiter falls in the 7th bhava in the Rashi chart. So a lot of what it wants and a lot of where it wants to find its purpose is going to be in relationships and partnerships. And of course, those will be big things in life because Jupiter rules big, heavy things, right? Jupiter means guru, means heavy. So a lot of heavy things in our life are going to be related to the house that Jupiter's in. That we'll have a lot of presence there. And that Jupiter's house always becomes an element of focus, simply because Jupiter's the heaviest planet in the chart. Okay? So, Jupiter's nice there in the Rashi chart, but here in the Dvadasamsa we can see there'll be a lack of purpose and a desire to make what responsibilities what one thinks they should be, instead of just embracing the responsibilities that naturally occur. And so Jupiter in Capricorn will sometimes be overly responsible as it really tries to prove to itself that it has some meaning and purpose. And in doing so, Jupiter loses its natural goodness. Like I mentioned the other day in another video, Jupiter gets exalted in Cancer, where he gets fulfilled, where he fulfills a person. And that person being fulfilled naturally just does good and gives good. Jupiter in Capricorn is the opposite. That's where Jupiter is totally unfulfilling to the person. And so they don't naturally just give off goodness. They'll often strive to do the right thing and be good, but it's not real, it's not sincere, because they're doing it because they don't feel it. They're trying to compensate for it. And so it's not a natural outpouring. And so all the good, responsible qualities and ability for surrender and sacrifice that Jupiter and Scorpio has, is really not that pure because Jupiter's in Capricorn in the Dvadasamsa, and there's a big compensatory desire behind that. Okay? And so now we really see this person's Jupiter more clearly. Okay? Okay, so that's an example of how we can sort of just look at the planets. In the astrology of character, or excuse me, the character effects of Grahas course, I spent a lot of time showing how to use that technique of seeing the meanings of planets and signs. Okay, and that's my favorite way to try to interpret signs. And I like that better than reading a cookbook explanation because it gives my mind something to work with, and then my intuition will let me personalize it for each person that I talk to. Instead of just having a cookbook memorized that I just quote to everybody, you get to play with the bhavas. And the bhavas have so many meanings that in playing with them, you can, for one person you might say children, for another person you might say investments, when it, say gambling when it comes to the 5th house, because your intuition reaches into that person's life and knows that that's more important to them than children or whatever. So it's a good system, and use it in the Dvadasamsa too to see how those planets are modified. So if you're a sign-based person, a person who likes to look at a person's nature based on the signs, use those signs of the Rashi and the signs of the Dvadasamsa heavily. Okay? And that'll give you a good foundation for that person's, how the planets are operating in their signs. Now let's just go to this person's Dvadasamsa now. Okay, their Dvadasamsa, the most important bhava is the 12th bhava. The 12th bhava is ruled by Jupiter over here in Sagittarius. And Jupiter we've seen is sleeping in Capricorn. So right away, there's not a lot of this great ancestral karma for this person to have come into their lives. Okay, unfortunately. Now, though Jupiter's sleeping, he's aspected by his friend Sun, who's in Scorpio, who can help. He's aspected by Venus, his enemy, but Venus is sleeping. Or excuse me, Mercury is enemy and Mercury is sleeping. By Venus is enemy and Venus is sleeping. Then Saturn is neutral. So even though Jupiter is sleeping, he's still delighted by the Sun. The Sun's helping him. Inside Jupiter's actually going to give some decent results. Even though Jupiter can't do anything himself, he's bailed out by the Sun. So this person doesn't have a great fate or fortune of good ancestral karma because Jupiter's sleeping. Okay, there's not a lot of motion there. But then they got this strong Sun, which, Sun in Scorpio there, which gives a focused, determined personality that's going to act according to its needs, but in a disciplined, focused way, which is a Scorpio quality. And that's going to help them actually make the most of the ancestral karma that they have. Okay? But it's not great by any means. Okay? It's a fortunate thing that Jupiter's not getting more starred by these, that's not getting starred by these other planets. Now the 12th bhava itself is influenced by the moon. Let's pull up the dignities here. The moon in the Great Friend sign by 41 points. By Mars in a neutral sign. By Jupiter, his lord, who's debilitated and therefore not influencing it. Then the 12th bhava is conjunct Mercury and the Sun. Okay? Mercury is debilitated. The Sun's in a Great Friend sign. So we have debilitated Mercury badly hurting that 12th house. But then we also have a lot of help on that 12th house. We have the moon helping it, and we have the Sun helping it. Two planets, Sun's in Great Friends, Moon in Great Friends. Two Great Friends planets do not make up for the damage of a debilitated planet. It takes two planets in own sign to make up for the damage of a debilitated planet, roughly. Okay? And the debilitated planet's actually conjunct it. So it's not a great 12th house for this person. So they don't have a great past, karma that's flowing through their ancestors. They don't have a great ancestral history. Okay, and they've actually got some inconsistencies in their ancestral history. So, they don't get those unseen blessings. And like I said, a great 12th house in the Dvadasamsa can give you a lot of unseen blessings that life just works out better than you might otherwise think. Well, this person, that's not really going to be so. It's really a mediocre with some difficulties on that 12th house. Okay? So they're not coming from a great karmic or ancestral background, but not a totally flawed one either. Now, Jupiter also rules the 9th house, the other important house in the Dvadasamsa. And it's very lucky, and that's the house of parenting. It's very lucky that the sun is helping that Jupiter. Otherwise, it would have been a disastrous 12th house. Okay. The 9th house is aspected by, let's check out the 9th house, the moon in a friend sign, Jupiter, who's debilitated, but the Lord of the sign never hurts this house, even though it's debilitated, by Venus, who's in a great enemy sign, so it's hurt by Venus, and by Saturn in its own sign. So Saturn's bolstering the 9th house by 38 points. Venus is hurting it about half as much, and the moon is helping a bit, okay, but hardly up to mention. Now, Venus is in a great enemy sign. Saturn's in own sign. Well, a planet in great enemy sign hurts a planet almost twice as much as a planet in own house. Okay, and it's almost the same if you remember from our Judging Bhava's course. If not, review that course. So Saturn's just barely helping out the Bhava more than it's hurting, because the aspect of Saturn is double that of Venus. And then the moon is aspecting the 9th house a little bit. So this helps make the parenting be so-so. Okay? Now, we see that the 9th Lord Jupiter is debilitated. We see that Venus, which is the father in a horoscope, one of the planets that represents father, Sun and Venus are father, Moon and Mars are mother, is one of the harmful planets to the 9th house. And as it turns out, due to this affliction in the 9th house, this person had issues with their parenting, in the sense that their parents divorced when they were 17. Okay? And part of this is due to this afflicted 9th house, which shows afflicted parenting, which oftentimes indicates a divorce. Okay, when that 9th house is hurt, parents can get hurt as a unit, and that can mean a divorce. So, so that's not a great thing they have. They're not a great 9th house. The other important house in the Dvadasamsa was the 3rd Bhava. The 3rd Bhava, where is that thing at? Okay, the 3rd Bhava is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Okay, Mercury's sleeping, and it's it's in a natural neutral sign, but it's sleeping. So sleeping, Mercury can't do anything to take care of that 3rd Bhava at all. Then Mercury, Mercury's influenced by its enemy moon, who's in a natural friend sign, so an enemy moon will hurt him, by neutral Mars, by neutral Jupiter, by friend Venus, who's sleeping, and neutral Saturn. So this is a starved Mercury, or it would be starved because Mercury's in aspected by moon, but then Mercury's in watery sign, which means Mercury's thirsty, but then it's sleeping. So it's a useless and depressed Mercury, basically, not a good 3rd Lord. So there's no way Mercury's going to contribute to making, a social effort and being able to work out problems with their associates and work with their associates and family as teammates, and in any way to make anything better in this chart. And so the ancestral life, the parental life, will be less fulfilling for this person. Okay. So that house doesn't help us get any better. Now the third bhava itself is aspected by the sun, which helps it, the moon, which helps it to 39 points. Mars is indifferent. Mercury's debilitated, but won't hurt it because it's the Lord. Jupiter is debilitated and aspects it to 25 points and is hurting it. Venus is in a great enemy sign and aspecting it to 37 points and is hurting it. Saturn aspects to 56 points, the third house, and Saturn's in its own sign, so Saturn gives some strength to it. So this third house is really mediocre. It's, again, there's not a lot of extra strength or talents or abilities or skills that this person has inherited to make a success of their life. One of the things that the third house is in this Dvadasamsa, it's the inherited skills and abilities that one has. And with Mercury being debilitated, ruling that house, they really don't have any unusual inherited skills from their ancestors, which is really interesting because some of their siblings, two of their siblings, have good third houses, and they've inherited all the traditional skills that that family ancestrally was strong in. But this person didn't inherit any of those because this mediocre third house. Okay, and the third house is an important thing of that Dvadasamsa. It is the inherited skills and abilities with which we can make a go of life and improve things in life. And it's not good in this chart. Then the sixth bhava is important too. Let's look at the sixth bhava. Sixth bhava is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury, again, as we've seen, is not in great condition. It's thirsty. It's suffering a lack. Sixth bhava is influenced by the sun, who's helping it, the moon, who's helping it, Mars, who's indifferent, Mercury, its lord, who's indifferent. Can't help it because he's sleeping, but not hurting it at least. By Venus, who's hurting it, but then Saturn, who's helping it. So between Sun, Moon, and Saturn in good dignity influencing the sixth, this person has a good sixth bhava. So all those planets will allow this person to work hard, and the Sun will make them really steadfast and hardworking. Saturn will make them persevering. And as a result of that, this person has done really well with what they've been given in life. They're extremely hardworking. They've worked really hard to fulfill their karmic burdens and pay the karmic debts of their ancestors, because that's one thing the sixth bhava is. So their sixth bhava is the one good bhava of the critical bhavas in this house. And that's them paying off their ancestral debts. And that's how they've done it. In fact, they moved back to the country of their ancestors, where they do good work and they're hard working in that country. And they had one of those subconscious treatments where they realized that they went back to their country because one of their parents wanted to go back to that country and always talked about it a lot and was never able to. And so they embraced that desire of their parent and went back to their country and lived there, to that foreign country. And, they really embraced and worked hard to fulfill those karmic parental and ancestral debts, because they have this really good sixth house. They've willingly embraced that and been drawn to doing that. And because of that, they've really made the most of their ancestral karma because they have that good sixth house, fortunately for them. Now, the most important planets, as we talked about, are Ketu and Rahu. Ketu in the Dvadasamsa. Well, first of all, Ketu is conjunct Jupiter. So Ketu has a strong Jupiter connection. And we see that Jupiter is debilitated in the Dvadasamsa. And it's not a great planet otherwise. Luckily, it gets some help from the sun. So this shows, again, the ancestral merit, the past life merit is very minimum, because the planet Ketu conjunct is not great in the Dvadasamsa. And of course, the planets that Ketu conjunct are the karmic past life planets that are most focused and important in this lifetime. And that Jupiter is debilitated in the Dvadasamsa. Then Ketu is going to give the results of Mars, who is in Virgo, where he's sleeping in a natural enemy sign. However, his Lord Mercury is sleeping too. So Mars is just totally flat, but not bad yet. Mars is helped by his friend Mars. Indifferent by Jupiter. Conjunct the moon, which is in a good dignity in the Dvadasamsa and a great friend sign. Again, Mars, the Lord, is conjunct moon. So Ketu's Lord is really good. Though he's sleeping, he's conjunct moon in the Rashi and picks up points there. He gets Jupiter can't help him because he's sleeping. Venus is indifferent, Saturn's indifferent, and the Sun is helping him. So when Mars itself is sleeping, the Sun and Moon go a long way in making the most of it. So this person, the Sun and the Moon are the two planets of you. Sun is your Atma, your soul, your bigger self, and the Moon is your egocentric self, your individual self. And both those planets are working hard to focus Mars and discipline Mars and get Mars to do the right thing. And Mars rules Ketu. So this person, with the ancestral karma they have, which isn't great because Mars is sleeping, they've really worked it and made the most of it. And that's been very true. This person moved back to their country of their ancestors, spent more time with their ancestors than anyone else in their family. Living with their uncles and aunts and grandparents, in the same area, in the same country as they did, whereas everyone else was a continent away. So there's a strong ancestral focus in their life. Again, like I said, Ketu has to do with more completing and resolving things with your past ancestors. This person has really done that. They've been there when they've died, and they've, done all those things, largely because of this delighted good Mars, which gives them a bigger focus in that. Okay, and that's brought a lot of benefits to them that the rest of their family doesn't have. Okay, so that Mars has allowed them to benefit more from their past karmas. And again, Ketu and Rahu represent your ancestors. And so they've very much done that thanks to this good Lord of Ketu. Okay, so again, you see how the important planet always makes a big difference in every Varga. The other important planet is Rahu. Rahu is in Taurus, and is conjunct Venus and Saturn in the Rashi chart. Now Venus is sleeping, aspected by enemy Sun, enemy Moon, Mercury, who's a friend but who can't help, and then starred by Saturn. So Venus is just really, really trashed, okay, unfortunately. Saturn, however, is really, really good. And of course, Rahu naturally gives the results of Saturn too. Saturn's in its own sign. Then he's aspected by enemy Sun, enemy Moons a little bit. Mars, these planets are all in dignities that they can't make a difference. And then conjunct Venus, who's sleeping, who can't help them. But Saturn's in its own sign, plenty enough to ward off these minor aspects of 15 points of Sun and 8 points of Moon. So Saturn's a good planet. Venus is a bad planet. So Rahu's going to give mixed results. It's going to give some good stuff on account of Saturn, but bad stuff on account of Venus. So Saturn, we know, is hardworking and persevering. Rahu has to do more with embracing the karmic debts of our ancestors. And of course, Saturn has to do with those debts. And of course, Rahu always gives the results of Saturn because Saturn's the planet of debts, and Rahu's about, doing the things we need to balance our karmas. So they do that. This is a hardworking person, as we've seen again. It's the 6th house and Saturn that shine in this Dvadasamsa. So they're paying the debts of their ancestors. Okay? Unfortunately, Venus, the Lord of Rahu, not being in great condition, and Venus is the planet that's more rewarding, doesn't give them a lot of rewards for doing that. Okay? Doing those things being involved in their ancestors' lives and helping them and sort of just in their life. You know, Dvadasamsa is all the karmas that you're burning for your ancestors, or even if you never even knew who your ancestors were, you still have ancestral karma to burn. And so they've got a good work ethic to allow them to do that, and they're doing that, but they're not getting a lot of blessings from that because of this weak Venus. Okay, it's not something that enriches their life in other ways. So it's not a really win situation. So we have a mixed Dvadasamsa, which means the ancestral blessings are not grand, but they're not totally disappointing either. Okay, so let's look at some of the difficult planets. Jupiter is debilitated. So Jupiter is one of the planets in the Dvadasamsa that's going to hurt the houses it's aspecting, or conjunct. Well, it's conjunct the 7th house. Okay, and the 7th house is the house of the husband. This is a woman. Jupiter rules the husband. So we see that due to the ancestors' problems in their relationships, this person has ancestral debt, we can say, and a genetic tendency is another way we can look at it, to not have great fulfillment with their husband, because Jupiter is debilitated here. Okay? And Jupiter is strongly influencing that 7th house and hurting it. So just because of Jupiter in the Dvadasamsa being debilitated, influencing the 7th house, right away we know this person can't have ultimate happiness with their marriage. No matter what Jupiter's doing in the other Vargas. Because one element, one of the important things to making it perfect is missing, is hurt. And that element is they just don't have the fate of destiny, you know, the karmic fate, the ancestral blessings, the DNA tendencies, whatever you call it, to pick the husband that's really going to be the most fulfilling to them. Okay? Because of that Jupiter being debilitated. And part of picking a husband successfully for a woman is that the woman's full of happiness, which is Jupiter. She naturally will attract the right man into her life. If she's not full of happiness, she'll try to find the right man and try to make the right man, and that never creates or gives the right man. And that's actually something what this person did, you know. They decided this was going to be the person they were going to be with because of the situations, and it wasn't completely fulfilling to them. One reason is because this lack of ancestral blessings and this DNA tendencies, inherited tendency to not choose wisely and most wisely in their marriage life. Okay, choose with respect to their husband. And of course, so the husband blessings are less in this lifetime because of that Jupiter being bad in the Dvadasamsa. The other planet that's bad in the Dvadasamsa is Mercury, who's debilitated. Okay? Now Mercury's in the 12th house. And what house does it aspect really strong? Strongest house it aspects is the 6th, which is its own house. So it won't hurt that house. Oh, I'm sorry, the 5th house, which is 55 points. Okay, so the strongest house Mercury is influencing and hurting is the 5th house. So this person is not going to have complete happiness with 5th house things simply due to Mercury's influence on there. Okay, and that will affect their 5th house life, okay, which is namely children and education. Okay, Mercury, particularly when it aspects the 5th house, is education. Jupiter aspecting 5th house particularly is children. Well, this person didn't finish their education, and instead moved to the city of their ancestors. And they didn't finish their education due to their person that they married. Now Mercury, if you notice, is the planet with the least degrees in the Rashi chart. So Mercury is the Dara Karaka, the planet of the spouse. So here we see the spouse in the Dvadasamsa is ruining their education. And so a guy ruined their education. Okay, and that was ancestral karma they had to burn for whatever reason. Okay, or the DNA tendency that um, they followed through on, but it was something in their fate. So when you look at the Dvadasamsa, you see the extremely good or bad planets, the debilitated planets and the well-dignified planets. Those planets will always have a big effect on the person's fate. And so if we don't look at the Dvadasamsa, we can really miss those things. Okay? Now in the Rashi chart, Mercury is debilitated too. And so it's sort of easy to see how Mercury is hurting the education because it's aspecting the 5th house in the Rashi chart too by the same much. But it's also happening in the Dvadasamsa, so it does it more. Now in the Rashi chart, Jupiter's in good dignity, so he's helping the 7th bhava, helping have a good husband. But in the Dvadasamsa, it's not. So it's not given as good of a husband as it could have. So you always got to modify everything in accordance with this Dvadasamsa Varga. It's an important Varga. The strongest planet in the Dvadasamsa is Saturn. Okay? Saturn, strongest aspect is to, let's see, the 1st bhava. It conjuncts the 1st bhava, and it's strong. So that gives a greater physical resistance to disease. Okay? This person had a hardier constitution, a stronger body than most of their other siblings, so they inherited a strong Saturn constitution, which is a good thing. Then the strongest aspect Saturn makes to any bhava is, oops, where's the bhava? Is the 7th bhava. Okay. Saturn influencing the 7th bhava, what does that give? Well, that gives concentration. And that gives extreme focus for survival, basically. Every planet influencing every house creates something different. Jupiter influencing 7th creates a spouse, a husband. Venus influencing 7th creates Venus influencing 7th creates a wife, or sexual relationship. Mercury influencing the 7th gives a business partner. Saturn influencing the 7th, one of the things the 7th represents is concentration. Okay, believe it or not. In fact, think about when you're most concentrated is when you're in love, right? When you want something, you're just naturally all you can do is think about that person you want, right? You can, and then also sex, another 7th house thing. When you're having sex, your mind is less distracted than when you're trying to study astrology usually. Hopefully not, but you know what I'm saying. But people's mind is usually less distracted when they're having sex than when they're doing other things. So the 7th house is where we put all of our focus and desire into something, so we have a lot of concentration with it. And when Saturn influences the 7th house for good, it gives that ability for that one-pointed focus, concentration, and putting up walls to everything else. And so this person has that inherited quality as well. This is a strong quality that they have due to that strong Saturn influencing the 7th house. You can kind of say that Saturn there lets a person focus on the most important desire and to push away all the least important desires. And that's one reason that Saturn has the Digbala directional strength in the 7th house. When it's in the 7th house, Saturn can most readily get rid of all distractions and just focus on what's most important. Okay? When Saturn's in the 1st bhava, it more readily gets distracted. So the Saturn aspecting that 7th bhava from good dignity helps them have that Saturn quality. Okay? That really hard focus. And when you meet people with that hard focus, you can really see it in their eyes usually. Their eyes just can have this hardness when they're focused to them. And Saturn, of course, is hard, right? And so when this person wants something, they get focused and hard about it, which is the quality of Saturn. Okay? So we can say that Saturn aspecting the 7th or in the 7th hardens the desires. Okay? and hardens the focus towards the desires. It makes it more narrow. Saturn's a very narrow planet. It knows it only can do so much, and so it just focuses that on what it considers the most important thing. Okay, so I'll give you some ideas about how to, look for the strongest planets. And sometimes it's a really good thing to do when you read a chart. Just look for the strongest and weakest planets in the Dvadasamsa, and you'll see that that thing is unexpectedly better than you expected, or unexpectedly worse than just looking at the other Varga charts in the Rashi chart. That, karmic influence, that ancestral influence, the DNA influence, the inherited influence, those things indicated by the Dvadasamsa have a huge impact on our our fate and destiny. Okay, looking at a couple other things. This person has a lot of Yama deity. Moon, Jupiter, and Venus are all in Yama things. And we've seen that Jupiter is not a great planet, and Jupiter rules some of the important houses. It rules the 12th house, it rules the 9th house. And Yama, of course, the god of death. And so when you see a planet that has some afflictions, and it's in the Yama Dvadasamsa, it's more likely to let something break. And of course, that's one of the main reasons Jupiter, even though it's not totally trash, but it's pretty bad, ended up destroying the parents, divorcing the parents and causing a breakup of the parents, because it's in the Yama Dvadasamsa where it's more inclined to give struggles and give terminations and give endings. Okay? The person doesn't have any planets in the Haya Dvadasamsa, which is unusual. Okay? And Haya, of course, is the knowledge we gain. It's, we can almost say the Haya Dvadasamsa represents the greatest knowledge that we inherit from our past lives, that we bring over, or that we share with our ancestors. This person has nothing in the Haya Dvadasamsa. And they don't have a good third Bhava in the Dvadasamsa, or a good third Lord, which is their inherited skills and abilities of our ancestors. So this person doesn't have any of the inherited knowledges and skills and abilities of their ancestors. Knowledge either. It's like they, compared to the other siblings, which share distinctive traits of love of certain knowledges and distinctive traits of skills with certain things, certain skills like craftsmanship. This person just doesn't share that stuff. Okay? So they're almost like the anomaly in the family in that respect. And those are the two reasons why. The trash third house and the no Haya Dvadasamsas, which help create that knowledge. There is, however, lots of things in Ganesha. 3 Ganesha Dvadasamsas, not including Rahu and Ketu. So this means lots of new things coming from the ancestors. A lot of ancestral things that are new. And that's been very true for this person's life. They're doing many things for the first time that none of their ancestors before them did. Okay, that Ganesha is indicating the new things that are being bred due to the ancestral karma. And based on what your ancestors did, new things are going to pop into your life. And those new things are not going to have a similarity to things that your ancestors had in their life. That might sound weird at first, but that's how life is. We do something, we finish it, and we get something new, right? Our ancestors do something, gets finished, and we get something new. It's like the same thing. As we finish things, new things happen. So this person's on very much a new track with respect to the things that come into their life as a result of their ancestors. So we could take like this Saturn Dvadasamsa, which is strong, and it's in a Ganesha. It's in the Ganesha Dvadasamsa. So it's getting new karmas as a result of or new things as a result of the ancestral karmas, and new Saturnian things. Okay, new type of work, new healing. This person is actually involved in healing, and disability more, okay, which is Saturn. This is a new thing, and of course Saturn, with disability basically, one of the things Saturn represents. And this person is involved in disability, with working with disabled people, which is a new thing in their family. There's no family record of that having existed. Okay, so again, Saturn represents something new as a result of that, something that's new and unique from your ancestors. So you're asking, well, how can that be important? Well, let's say a person is trying to figure out what to do in life, and you see that they're running, like this person, they were running the dasha of Saturn. And Saturn, and they're thinking, gosh, I'm thinking about doing, this, but my parents want me to follow the family business. And if we see Saturn's in the Ganesha Dvadasamsa, we can say you're certainly not meant to follow the family business. You're meant to do something new. So this other thing you've talked about is not something that your family's been involved in several generations back. Therefore, this is definitely the right thing you should do. So all of a sudden, you can really quickly see what's right or wrong. Okay? If Saturn, if they're running a planet of an Ashwin's Dvadasamsa, that planet is going to be much more inclined for them to do the same things that their ancestors did. Ganesha Dvadasamsa is not. The Yama Dvadasamsa is going to cause them to make, to finalize and finish, and perhaps get involved only to get rid of the things that their ancestors were involved in. Okay? So, so you can use these that way. You don't need to use them all the time, but it's a good tool to have when you want to see the link of something to somebody's families and ancestors. If you need to look for that link, go to the Dvadasamsa. Okay? And that also has to do, of course, with inheritances. Whether, is an important place to look at in the Dvadasamsa. Any inheritance that comes from any family member above you, meaning not your siblings, but from your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, and your uncles, which are, again, part of your ancestral karma too, though not as strongly related. Anything like that, anything from generations preceding you, any inheritance from that, look at the Dvadasamsa to see what you're going to inherit, and if it's going to be things they had, or you're going to develop new things as a result of their karmas, which would be indicated by the Ganesha Dvadasamsas. Okay, Dvadasamsa can be a little bit confusing. I hope everyone made some, got a few things under their belt on this example chart. We'll have some more. We'll illustrate the more important points some more so we can get it, because it's a bit of a difficult Varga to use, but you can see it's an important Varga, and you do want to use it anytime there's something ancestral, and also just to see the karmically really strongly good or bad things. That's probably where you're going to use it the most. Like just the fact that Mercury is debilitated and Jupiter are debilitated means karmically they've got some big struggles with Mercury and Jupiter. Friends and husband, right? Two of the people that Jupiter rule. Then you can look at Saturn's really strong. Well, they've got a great ability to work by themselves, which is another quality of Saturn. And of course, when it aspects the 7th house, it really gives a quality and ability to work by oneself, to work in isolation and focus. This person has that because of that strong Saturn. So strong things that we're strong on or weak on, we'll definitely notice in the Dvadasamsa. The things that are in the middle ground, we don't have to worry about, because they're in the middle, right? And that's sort of the status quo. In astrology, we need to find the extremes, which are the things that make things and break things. The things in the middle are just sort of life, how it is for everybody, which is just this sort of mediocre, okay thing that's worth living, but nothing really to talk about. When people come in for a reading, we have to look at the great things and the terrible things that are worth talking about. And one place to find those things is in the Dvadasamsa. Okay? And just seeing that debilitated Jupiter, we can see they've had some big disappointments from men and some big disappointments from friends, which is Mercury. Just right there, and that's completely true. Okay, enough said on that chart. Thank you.